My name is Leah Huggins. I'm a wife, a mother, and a proud U.S. Navy veteran. After 2 tours to Iraq, my husband was diagnosed with PTSD. My world spiraled out of control as fear, anxiety, doubt, and depression took over. I gave my life to Christ, took on a new mindset, and let go of the negativity of my past. I now help wives to find healing, encouragement, and strategy to overcome the effects of PTSD on their daily lives and in their marriage. So come on in and let's talk about it. Welcome to Marriage, Motherhood, and PTSD. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Marriage, Motherhood, and PTSD. This is the place where I empower and encourage women to take back their life as I give them the tools that are needed for self-love, for growth, and development. I'm your host, Coach Leah, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. All right, you guys, as usual, we got another good show for you, okay? Today, we're going to be diving into a topic that every family is going to have to face at some point. And what is that? Crisis. Now, I'm not just talking about those disasters that you see on the news. I mean the kind of crisis that knocks on your door and flips your whole life upside down in a moment. For me, one of those moments came the night before Thanksgiving years ago when my husband had a car accident. He totaled our vehicle and it landed him in the hospital for a few days. One minute we were planning for the holiday, and the next I was thrown into survival mode, just trying to figure out how to keep things together while we're making sure that he was okay. And that's the reality of crisis. It shows up uninvited, and it doesn't care about your schedule. As wives and mothers, we often become the glue that holds everybody together. But here's what I learned. You can't always wait until the storm hits to decide how you're going to respond. So preparation has to start before the crisis even comes. This episode is not about pretending that life is not going to throw you curveballs, because it will. It's all about how you as a wife and as a mother can respond with strength, with clarity, and with love when those curveballs come. We're going to be talking about mindset and preparation and communication, and yes, using your faith to tie it all together. So when we talk about crisis, a lot of people automatically think about big disasters like hurricanes or tornadoes or pandemics. But the truth is, crisis doesn't always make the evening news, right? A crisis is anything that disrupts your normal and it throws your family into a survival mode. For me, it was the night before Thanksgiving years ago that I was just talking about when my husband had that car accident. We went from planning our turkey and dressing to sitting in the hospital, right? Trying to figure out what came up next. So our plans changed instantly, and so did our sense of security. And that's what crisis does. It doesn't knock first, right? It just barges in and it demands your attention. And the thing about crisis is this: it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when. Crisis is going to look different for everybody. Maybe it can be a medical emergency, or maybe a sudden loss of income, or maybe a child is in trouble, or even some sort of mental health struggle or an unexpected death. It doesn't matter how prepared or how unprepared you feel. A crisis will disrupt your life. And here's another thing. Some people fall apart when crisis hits, right? And I don't say that with judgment. Crisis has a way of exposing what's really going on inside of us. It reveals the areas that we still need to grow in, the weak spots in our systems, and the mindset that we bring into the storm. So as wives and mothers, it's important to understand that our role is often to stand in the gap for our families, to be that steady presence when the world around us feels like it's shaking. But we can't do that if first we don't understand what crisis is, how it shows up, and what it requires of us. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned, and I've seen it time and time again, is that preparation matters, right? Crisis is hard enough on its own, but when you add a lack of preparation to the mix, it just becomes a nightmare. So you guys, I can't even tell you enough how many horror stories I've seen where someone passes away suddenly and then the family is left scrambling. right? There's no insurance policy, no will, no plan in place. And now the people left behind, they should be focused on grieving and healing, but they're stuck trying to raise money for a funeral, right? We've seen it too many times. Families have to sell dinners, or they have to throw fish fries or beg for donations just to lay their loved one to rest. And if that's not enough, right? Let's be real. When there's no will, family members are going to start fighting. Greed is going to get ugly. It's going to rear its ugly head, right? And instead of pulling together, families end up falling apart over what's left. And all of that chaos could have been avoided with just a little preparation, right? This is not about judgment. I want us to be wise women, right? Wise women build their house, right? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to build our house. All right. I've also seen the flip side of this. I knew of a man who left his wife a binder. Yes, a binder, right? It was full of all the information that she was going to need when he passed away. It had all the insurance policies, it had bank accounts, it had passwords and important documents all in one place. And so when the time came, she didn't have to go searching or fighting with anybody. Everything was in order, and she was free to focus on her grieving and healing instead of having to scramble to get everything done. That is the power of preparation, right? It doesn't take away the pain of the crisis, but it keeps the crisis from being bigger than it has to be. And as wives and mother, part of standing in the gap for our families is making sure that when the unexpected happens, that our house is in order. There is nothing like the shock of getting that phone call in the middle of the night that changes everything. That's exactly what happened years ago, the night before Thanksgiving. I had fallen asleep on the couch after getting my dinner together, and all of a sudden, the phone rings. And a neighbor told me that my husband had been in this car accident. She said, "It's bad. You better get down here now." And the kids were asleep. And the oldest, he was just old enough to stay at home by himself. So I quickly threw on some clothes and shoes because it was right around the corner. So I threw on my clothes and my shoes. I locked the door behind me and I drove around the corner, and I was terrified of what I was going to find. So when I pulled up, the fire truck and the ambulance, they were already there, right? His truck was laying sideways in the ditch, and they were trying to cut him out, right? It was blood everywhere, and I couldn't even get close to him. All I could do was just stand there helpless while they worked on him and they loaded him into the ambulance. And I'll be honest with you, my mind was racing. Fear was screaming at me, right? Thoughts like, what if he doesn't make it? What am I going to do? How am I going to raise these kids by myself? I whispered a quick prayer, but I really couldn't even focus. Fear and panic, they had all my thoughts all over the place, right? And this is what I want to talk to you about today, okay? Your mindset in a crisis. Panic will always paralyze you. Panic will always cause you to make the wrong decisions. When your emotions take over, you lose clarity. And in a crisis, clarity is everything. Your attitude and your mindset, they determine not only how you walk through the crisis, but how your family experiences that crisis too. So if you fall apart, your kids are going to fall apart, right? If you panic, your spouse is going to feel the weight of that. But if you could just take a breath and steady yourself and hold on, even if it's just barely, you set the tone, right? I wasn't perfect in that moment. Fear definitely tried to get the best of me, but even in that chaos, I learned something powerful. You can't stop your mind from racing, but you can train yourself not to let panic run the show. Sometimes it's as simple as just pausing and breathing and remembering your emotions don't get to drive the car, right? You do. In that moment, after my husband's accident, it wasn't about whether God could do it, right? I knew that he could do it. The question rolling around in my heart was, Lord, will you do it? Will you spare him? Will you bring him through this? And then another question followed right behind that one, and that was, even if you don't, will I still have faith? And that's where it gets real, because crisis has a way of pushing you into those hard, honest places, right? Not the pretty church answers, but the raw questions. God, are you going to come through for me? And listen, that's not a lack of faith. That's faith being tested. Faith isn't just believing in God's power, it's trusting his presence, even when the outcome isn't what you prayed for. Paul and Silas, they showed us this, right? At 11:59 p.m., where were they? They were in chains. And at midnight, they were free. But either way, they had already made up in their minds to give God praise. And even the three Hebrew boys in the furnace, right? They told the king, our God is able to deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we will not bow. That's the kind of faith that steadies you in the fire. Because faith doesn't always mean that you don't fear. Faith means that you remember that you're not alone. Jesus is right there in the fire, in the hospital room, in the sleepless nights, and in the moments when you whisper, Lord, help me hold it together. Faith doesn't erase the cries, but it anchors you through it. When my husband had his car accident, the very first thing I had to do was to think about my kids, right? They were little, and we were in the military at the time, which meant that our families were hours away. I couldn't just call my mom or my aunts and tell them, hey, come get the kids. I got to go to the hospital. I had to figure things out right then. So my first step was finding someone that I trusted to take care of them while I went away to check on my husband. That meant that the kids ended up staying with another family for Thanksgiving that year, right? And let me tell you, as much as I wanted to be in the hospital right away, I knew I had to come home first because you can't show up fully in a crisis if the basics at home are not handled. I had to take care of them babies first. So that's the first practical step in any crisis, right? You got to meet immediate needs. Safety first, of course. Take care of what has to be tended to first. That's going to be your food, your clothing, your shelter. Deal with your kids, your pets, whatever's urgent in that moment, right? Get those things stabilized so then you can focus on the crisis at hand without having to worry about everything else falling apart. Now, the second step is communication. Don't try to carry everything alone, right? Make those phone calls. Let your support system know what's happening, right? Reach out to a neighbor, a church member, a close friend. Crisis is not the time to isolate yourself. The third step is calling for backup, right? Sometimes backup looks like calling 911, or sometimes it's knowing who your child can talk to or having a trusted friend who can ride with you. Backup could also be those prayer partners that you can text who can start to cover you in prayer right away. Right? The point is, don't shut down in a crisis. Don't let pride or fear make you silent. You got to use your resources. Lean on that community that you have and allow people to step in and help you. When I think back on that night, I realized how much I leaned on the people around me, right? First, it was my neighbor, the one who called about the accident, who also stepped in to watch the kids until I could get back from the hospital, right? And then the next day, when I found out they were going to be keeping my husband in the hospital, I called the kid's babysitter, right? And she was more than a sitter. She was actually a good friend and a member of my church family. So she took the babies for the rest of the week. So they were cared for. And she cared for them so good, it was almost like they're her own children. It's nothing like having that safe environment when you know that peace of mind when you got somebody taking care of your kids. And that actually ended up giving me the space to focus on my husband and to handle what needed to be done without having to worry about my babies. And then there was his circle of friends, right? So I called the one friend. I told him what happened. I knew he would contact the brothers, but I told him he's all right. You don't have to worry about coming to the hospital. But what happened? I looked up and there he was. His presence actually gave me time to step away just for a little while, just to shower, to change my clothes, and even get a little bit of rest. And he ended up contacting the other friends, and suddenly the calls, they all started coming in and people were checking on me. They asked, did I need anything? And they made sure that we weren't walking through it alone. That is the power of community, right? Crisis is heavy, but it's lighter when you have people around you that help you to carry the load. As wives and as mothers, we can sometimes fall into the trap of trying to do it all ourselves. But crisis is not the time to isolate, and it's not the time to carry everything alone. Community doesn't make crisis go away, but it reminds you that you don't have to face it by yourself.
Whether it's neighbors or friends or church family or even a support group, you need people that you can call, people that will step in and pray with you and feed your kids or just sit with you, right? Don't shut people out in the middle of a storm. Lean on them because community is one of the tools that God gives us in order to make it through trouble.
Have you checked out the PTSD Wives Handbook? This book is for the wife whose spouse has survived trauma and is now navigating through mood swings, flashbacks, and mishandled emotions. PTSD can create a toxic home environment and cause a divide in the closest and most meaningful relationships. As a caretaker, the PTSD wife is finding herself at the receiving end of anger, aggression, and constant negativity. This can create a personal, mental, and spiritual health crisis for her. In this book, Coach Leah uncovers the hidden wounds of trauma and the effects that it can have on your relationship. Based on biblical principles, she teaches you the tools and resources that are needed to handle stressful situations and to seek help from the Lord and foster a deeper relationship with Him. By reading this book and putting the principles into action, you're going to learn how to take control of your life and grab hold of the power that lies within. Grab your copy of the PTSD Wives Handbook today by clicking the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
And I'll be honest, when my husband's accident happened, I was glad he was okay, but I was also mad, right? I was mad about the situation. I was mad that it could have been avoided. I was upset about losing my vehicle, right? That car was totaled. And every single day after that, I had to drive past the ditch where it happened, right? So the truck had gone off the road right around the corner from our house. And every time I passed it, I could see the evidence of the accident, right? The grass was torn up, it was glass shattered everywhere, and even the pieces of the car were still laying there. One day I saw my whole fender sitting in the ditch, right? So I actually pulled over in traffic to pick it up, and I felt so sad and ashamed, right? And I was carrying it to my car like I was carrying a piece of that pain with me. And for the longest time, every time I drove by, I felt chills, right? That spot reminded me of loss, of fear, of inconvenience, right? But then something shifted. So a year or two later, I looked over and I realized the grass had grown back in that spot, right? And not just the grass, there were flowers there too. Yes, they were weeds, right? But they were still beautiful. The place that once looked like destruction, it now looked like new life. And that's when it hit me. Even after having something so horrible to happen, beauty can always find you again, right? The mess had been cleaned up, the ground had healed, and what was once a place of pain, it actually became a place of new beginnings. And that's exactly how crisis works. It tears things up, and then it leaves broken pieces scattered. And for a while, all you can see is the damage. But if you give it time, right? If you let God work on you, beauty is going to rise from it, right? You're going to grow, you're going to heal, and you're going to find some sort of meaning in what tried to break you. Romans chapter 8, verse 28, it tells us all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. And I believe that, y'all, even in the middle of the crisis. You may not see it right away, but growth is happening. Flowers are going to bloom again, even in the place where it felt like everything was lost. Now, let me get a little churchy now here for a minute, all right? About 2 Sundays before my husband's accident, I was in church with the kids during praise and worship, right? And in the middle of it, I felt the Spirit tell me to go grab my children and go praise God together as a family. And at first I thought, nah, I don't want to do this, right? I don't want to look like I'm trying to be seen or like I was trying to show off with my kids, all right? But praise kept going on. And it was almost like it was trying to wait for me to obey. And so finally I gave in. I grabbed my kids and I said, come on, y'all, we're going to praise God for daddy, right? Now listen, my husband wasn't even there that day, okay? I don't even know why. I just obeyed. And together we danced and we praised God on his behalf, right? I couldn't make it to church the next Sunday, and then the week after that was the accident. So when I finally did return to church in the middle of worship again, the Holy Spirit speaks to me again and he said, "Do you remember when I had you praise me for your husband? That praise saved his life." And let me tell you, I believe it, okay? Because when that accident happened, my husband wasn't wearing a seatbelt. His head went straight into that windshield, leaving a bubble the size of his head in that windshield, right? His body had bent the steering wheel from the impact. And like I said, it was blood everywhere. He lost consciousness more than once, but he didn't have a single broken bone in his body, not one. He should not have survived that accident, but God. All right? Where's my tambourine? And it doesn't stop there, right? That busy street where the accident happened, usually full of traffic, it was completely empty that night. So the very neighbor who found him just so happened to be someone who had my phone number, who could call me immediately. That wasn't an accident. That was divine timing, right? Nothing just happens. Every piece of it was orchestrated, right? God spared his life and God gave me the strength to walk through it. So yes, faith was the tie that held it all together. Preparation mattered. Mindset mattered, community mattered, but faith made the difference between despair and hope, between tragedy and testimony. All right? Where's my tambourine? And the question that remained for me was this: even if he hadn't, would I still have faith? Right? That's the kind of faith that crisis demands of us, right? The kind that says God is able, but even if he doesn't, I will still trust him. Wow. So, y'all know I can't leave you without a little coaching moment, right? Because it's one thing to hear a good word, but it's another thing to put it into practice. Crisis is going to come no matter what, okay? That's not meant to scare you. That's just life. So the question is, when it comes, will you be prepared? Will you be steady? Will you be rooted in faith and not in fear? So here's your action plan for the week, okay? It's time for the coaching moment. Y'all know this is my favorite part of the show. All right, so I want you to grab your journal, grab your notebook, or even the notes app on your phone, whatever it is. And I want you to work through some of these steps, okay? Step number 1, you got to get your house in order. All right? I want you to write down what you have and what you don't have, right? Do you have life insurance? Do you have a will? Do you know where all the important documents are? If not, this is the week that you need to make a move, right? You're going to start small if you have to, but you're just going to start. All right? That's the important part. Okay, step 2. I want you to identify your circle. All right? Who are your people? Who are your people you can call at 2 a.m. if something happens, right? Write their names down and write their numbers down, okay? Make sure that your spouse and your kids know who those people are too, all right? Your community matters. So don't wait until the storm comes to start figuring out who you can lean on, okay? All right, y'all. Step 3. Strengthen your mindset. All right. You're going to take a moment to reflect on how you normally react in a crisis, right? Do you panic? Do you shut down? Do you get angry? Be honest with yourself, okay? Then I want you to choose one practice this week to help you to respond better, okay? Maybe it's deep breathing. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's just practicing gratitude, okay? Remember, you can't always control the crisis, but you can control your response, all right? And let me add this. Don't forget your faith, all right? Use your faith to tie it all together because preparation, community, and mindset will take you far, but your faith is going to carry you the rest of the way. All right. So this week, I want you to take those steps seriously. All right. Don't just hear me. I want you to do the work because the time to prepare is now before the crisis shows up. You guys, this was a good one. Okay. I know it was a heavy one, but I hope that you're walking away not only encouraged, but equipped. All right. Because here's the thing, crisis is going to come. We can't avoid it, but we can prepare for it. All right. We can keep our mindset steady, right? We can lean on our community and we can let our faith tie it all together. Okay. Now, before I let you go, I want you guys to do me a favor. If this episode has blessed you or encouraged you or made you think, I want you to take a minute to like and share and subscribe and even leave a comment about the show. All right. I would love to hear your thoughts and your own experiences. And if you know another wife or a mom or a sister that needs to hear this word, I want you to share it with her too. That's how we spread encouragement and empower each other. All right. Together. I don't want you to leave here empty-handed either, okay? I put together a free resource just for you. It's called the Crisis Management Checklist. It's a printable guide that's going to lay out the steps that we talked about today, right? What to have prepared before a crisis ever comes, what to do first when a crisis hits, and how to steady yourself and your family. Oh, and also a list of all the documents and the accounts and the resources that every family needs to get in order, right? It's something that you can download and print and start filling out this week so that when life happens, you don't have to panic because you'll already be prepared. We'll be putting the link in the show notes, so make sure that you go grab it, okay? You guys, that was fast. That is my time today. I want to thank you for coming to hang with me in these empowerment streets. All right. I got to go for now. But until we meet again, I want you to be encouraged, be empowered, and be blessed. Peace, y'all.